Okay, so let's place this where you can kind of see me. Awesome. That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Is it recording?
It is recording. Just let me check one more time. It's recording. Okay, thank you everybody for being here. Jamie Porter, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist supervisor and a licensed professional counselor supervisor. And today what we're going to be going over are the requirements for licensure in regards to split it down the middle, LPC intern track, and the MFT associate track. So what I wanted to just kind of point out as I'm going through this, in your mind, I really want y'all to think about as supervisors in training, right? As supervisors in training, I want y'all to think a little bit about where y'all came from in your own track, how this will be applicable to those that you're training on their track. And if you're split, you're an LPC and MFT, it's important also to think about what this looks like they're two different realms, okay? So this is the rules and regulations of these, and I'm just gonna kind of just real quick, I've got one interested in the LPC supervisor track, I've got one in the MFT supervisor track, I've got one in an MFT and LPC supervisor track, and then I've got one zoomed over here, which, by the way, I'm gonna just show this real quick. So we've got one that I zoomed in. So Kate, I just want you to remember this is kind of a neat thing because we'll be technologically bringing in some people along the way. That's kind of what happens when our supervisors that want to do this program can't be here in person. So I've got one MFT LPC interest track, one on the MFT track, and then one on the LPC track. Okay, thanks guys. So, I might have to move that again so they can see me. Am I in it? Oh, this is good. Okay. So, and then we're gonna go through this, and then I have an activity for us as we go along at the very end so that we can put this stuff into application, okay? So, this first slide, I'm gonna go back and forth, but I'm gonna explain the intern, LPC intern side first, and then I'm going to move over to the MFT associate side. So first off, before we go in, rules and regulations. Anybody know where we go and find rules and regulations for your specific track?
On the Texas Board website.
Texas Board website, yeah. So it's a DSHS. You can go and search in Google. You can search LPC Texas, you can search MFT Texas, and it'll come up, and on your main page on the right side, rules and regulations. Rules and regulations are incredibly important because to our supervisees, we want them to be able to know what it is, why they're doing what they're doing, what it is that they're getting themselves into, what are the rights and wrongs of what's going on. And for the board, it's important that the board is sharing with you all these things because they do change. Actually in my paperwork in red at the top, and it's got a little asterisk on here, it's proposed. We just got some rules proposed in December, this past December 14th, 2018. Proposed doesn't mean that it's actually in play. Proposed means that along the way there's been maybe concerns or complaints or obstacles along the way. The boards have come together and decided, well, we need to make some changes. That's going on right now on the MFT side. There have been some previous proposals in the past, and then when it comes to surface, a lot of the supervisors get to hear about it. It's proposed up on the board, on the rules and regulations website, and on the LPC and MFT website, so y'all can go in and see that stuff. Okay, so again, a lot of information. You do not have to know this. That's why they're printed out for us to go to, but a really good practice for y'all when y'all have your supervisees in front of y'all is to ask them to go in, print up the rules and regulations, and have them saved to their computer so that they can pull them up. And again, as a supervisor, you're going to be reviewing these things with them along the way. So we're breaking it down to just a couple of points here, not specifics of the whole rules and regulations because it's a really giant, big document. So what we're looking at right now is just what you need to be, what you need to go through to become a to go through supervision as a supervisee. So again, remember, y'all are the supervisors. somebody contacts you and says they want to be your supervisee and they want to go through a track with you as their supervisor. So one of the things we're looking at is, do they have the requirements to be a supervisee? So for LPC intern, some of the qualifications, they have to meet the academic requirements, okay? They have had to pass the test, LPC test. They have to have filled out the paperwork for the application. So there's a place where you go also on this website. There's documents over on the right, and you pull them up, and there's an application you turn in to the board. And in this, there's also a supervisor agreement form. The supervisor, for LPCs, the supervisor, that's y'all, have to turn in the paperwork. It's written actually on the top, and it's written in bold print. Supervisor must turn this in. Fairly new rule. Can't tell you specifically when it got put in, but the supervisor is the one turning in all of the paperwork. And then again, those supervised hours cannot be completed until that, the hours cannot even start until that form is filled out, okay? So the intern, the LPC supervisor, think about that in your brain. Those that are both, think about it, and then even those that are not, just think about what that looks like. Now we're gonna move over to MFT. So for MFT associates, so you are the supervisors, you have MFT supervisees underneath you, and what is required for them to start this process is, we're gonna actually jump down to the 801.202 to get your associate license. They have to also have a master's degree in MFT. They have to have an official transcript submitted, and it has to be through an accredited program. They too also have to complete the application and have the fees. There has to be a supervisory agreement form on file with the board and proof that they passed the exam. Going up a little bit to that part above it, basically it's just saying that the license can be issued within 30 days after the application and fees. So they're just talking about the turnaround rate, that if you lose or damage your associate license, then you have to write a request to get and pay a fee to get that back, and that they keep it, that you need to keep it, if there's additional locations, you keep that on file, not the board. MFT, additional locations, you keep that on file, not the board. Okay, any questions about that so far? Very different rules. They're both written, they're two separate entities. If those that are on the MFT and LPC supervisor track, we have to remember that there are differences. If you have just one track, remember that you're keeping it according to what your state laws are asking you to do in those rules and regulations. The second page, and again, something that we're keeping mind of as we're going through this are similarities and differences. So sometimes in my head as a dual licensed supervisor, I think, wouldn't it be nice if there was just one? Like, that would make my life so much easier, so that I don't get things mixed up. And I have declared to some of my supervisees that I'm not perfect, and that sometimes I have to go back to the rules and regulations and check. So just remember that they are separate. That's why they're here in rules and regulations, to keep us on top of it, so that we don't get confused. This next one is, once they've got their temp license, what is the time frame? So we're on the second page, Christian, on this time frame that they can get their license taken care of. So over on the LPC intern side, you're the supervisor for an LPC intern, and you cannot start collecting your hours until it shows that you're active on the roster. So go back to your Texas LPC page. It shows up on the DSHS. On the left side, there's a place where you click on, and it shows search supervisor, or search candidate, or search something. You can search a candidate. You go in, you can put your name. You put your
licensee.
It's a search licensee. Thank you.
Yeah.
And you go and you search the. You put your supervisee's name, first name, last name, and you press search, and it'll pull up their name, and underneath it, it'll show active or inactive. And once it's active on the LPC roster, it also puts place of employment. And so in place of employment, that's important, because then they can see that they're active, they've got you as your supervisor, it shows in there, it says who your supervisor is, and then it also shows that you're active and you can start collecting hours, okay? So counseling in LPC intern world, counseling is the only part of internship. They just define you have to be doing counseling to collect those hours. No more than 2 active supervisors at a time. So as an LPC supervisor, your supervisee can have you as a supervisor and they can have another supervisor, 2 max. No more than 5 sites at a time. So I did have a supervisee, an LPC supervisee that had multiple offices, multiple locations. It added up to about 5 locations by the time we turned in our paperwork. But it wasn't 5 at once. But did you know that you could get up to 5 sites at once? That's a lot to do, but you can. Get those hours quick, I guess. Your temp license, you're the one that's maintaining it as far as the supervisee. 5 years to the day after issuance, that your temp license expires. So for LPC, it is a maximum of 5 years, okay? And when you reapply after the 5 years, you must reapply after 60 months, which is the 5 years. You reapply again in Texas and you follow the standard rules, okay? And then cannot obtain any hours unless under supervision. So at that 5-year mark, you have to take a break. You're not collecting hours. You're checking with the board to see if they'll let you continue under the LPC track. And then they're also, you're not under supervision. You're probably not working. You're probably not collecting hours. And as long as you're under supervision, then you can continue hours. But the board has to be in a line with site active, supervision active, and less than 5 years for LPC. Supervisors are the ones that submit the new paperwork. Christian is under an LPC supervisee of mine, and he is filling in the paperwork for a new site. I'm the supervisor of his. I have to turn in the paperwork. That's what LPC requires. Applicants from other states must show proof of postgraduate experience from that state. Again, there are some rules that expand a little bit more. So if you're working with a supervisee from another state or they're coming in from another state, there's a whole back to the rules and regulations that will describe a little bit about what those confounds and boundaries look like. MFT associates, so those with the MFT associate brain or those that are switch back over to your MFT associate brain, 2 years to 6 years. I thought it was 2 to 5. I'm looking at rules and regulations. That's why this is important. It says 24 months to 72 months, 2 to 6 years. And there's a biannual renewal. So every 2 years, they're actually making sure that you're up to date on your renewal, okay? There is expansion. So after that 6-year time period, if you have not collected all your hours, we are filling out paperwork with your supervisee on the MFT associate track, looking for expansion of more time. One of the reasons why that would be needed, you may have over 3,000 hours, but if you do not have in the MFT realm 750 of your relational hours, which is required for MFT, and relational means you're working with couples, you're working with families, there is a relational component, then you need to have an extension because that's incredibly important in the MFT realm. Past 72 months, which is after that 96 months, then that you have to wait to reapply. So again, that's quite a long time. At that point, I'm sure we're talking to our supervisees about if this is really the track that they want. They really want to be a therapist and what we need to do to guide them along the way. In case of reapplication, the board for the MFT associate side gets to decide how much gets carried over. Question?
Okay, I don't know if you go over this later, but how many supervisees can a LPC supervisor have and an MFT supervisor have? Do you go over that?
I do. Good question.
Oh, okay.
Good question. Thank you. And if you do have questions, feel free to ask. I may not have the answers. I'm not the expert. That's why these rules are here, and I'd be more than happy to share what I have experienced, because as y'all are in training to be supervisors, you don't know if that's going to be your next challenge. Is that going to be the obstacle you have with your supervisees? Networking is incredibly important in this realm, okay? So the next page, we're going to move on to what it looks like for you to actually get your license. Experience requirements. So this should look normal. What I want you to think about is when you were going through your internship program. So again, LPCI are interns, MFTA is associates. So when you were an intern or an associate or both and going through this process with your supervisor, what was actually required as you're doing these things. Okay, so as an LPC intern, 3,000 hours for the LPC track, 1,500 direct, 1,500 indirect, okay? So, and if your supervisee has questions about what is the definition of direct and indirect, you can explain that a little bit more when you first meet them or along the way, but really the direct is the one-on-one interaction you're having with your clients. It can be obtained in 18 months. LPC intern track, you can get your full turn in your paperwork at 18 months from the day you start your internship, site approved, supervisor approved, active on the roster. 18 months. Can't go less than 18 months. Internship can commence when, and there's some qualifications, that's just some backtrack work. Postgraduate hours not accepted if post 5 years. So they're saying after 5 years you cannot continue to collect hours. So again, that's when we're looking at reapplication. Experience must include counseling. Just very big on counseling. I'm not sure why they write rules. Why do we all have rules? We put on our safety belts because we don't want to get in accidents, right? So rules are in play for a reason. So when they say must include counseling, there must be a reason why that rule is there. MFT associate. So we're switching over to the requirements for MFT. This is rules 801.141 to 801.142. Don't get bogged down by the numbers. LPC and MFT have different numbers, but go again to the rules and regulations and they'll guide you through it. Must be an LMFT associate. So again, we, as previously written, they have to pass the test. They have to have completed the academic requirements. They must have an active supervisor and a site on hand. So a minimum of 3,000 hours of the, similar to the LPC track, 1,500 direct and 1,500 indirect. Y'all may want to write that direct, and I think there's a mistype, is indirect on that second 1,500. The first 1,500 direct, again, the 750 relational component. Very important that when your supervisees are tracking their hours on the MFT associate track, it's not just direct. Was it individual? Was it couples? Was it family? So you can identify whether it's individual or relational, because the form you fill out at the end with your supervisee is going to ask how many of these were relational, how many of these were individual, okay? We also, and finding that paperwork to track that or to create that with your supervisee is important. Next one, staff may count hours that exceed requited hours in graduate internship, but no more than 500. So MFT associates actually have the ability to carry over 500 hours, up to 500 hours. It's after what their internship hours were. So hypothetically, your internship hours were to collect 300 hours, and you collected 350. You can carry the 50 over to your collection of direct hours. That's what that says. So I remind my supervisees as we're collecting hours, and sometimes I forget, but those hours can come over if they were the hours after the internship count that they got in their graduate school. So sometimes they have to go back to their graduate school, find out what was required. If they got an amount over, might be 1, might be 12, might be 50, but if it goes all the way up to 500, they can even carry over 500, up to 500. I've never seen up to 500. And some people will,
69.
and they can add 60, that was 69 of yours. There you go. Cannot start to collect until issuance date. So again, you cannot start to collect those hours until you're shown live on the roster. Okay.
Question, Jamie?
Go. Question.
Yes. So if I'm reading all of this correctly, you don't necessarily have to renew your LPC intern license, but the supervisee does need to renew the MFT associate license while they're an associate. Is that correct?
The MFT, yeah, is requiring you to renew it every 2 years, and the LPC intern track does not bug you about it.
Okay.
Does that make sense? That's how I'm reading this, rules and regulations, and that's how I've witnessed it too. LPC intern, next page. So this is important. I think this is really important because there's some movement on this. Hours of, does supervision look like? Okay, so LPC intern track for that part of your brain, says 4 hours a month. Okay, so the neat thing about that is, 4 hours a month. So if you're out for a week, double up on another week. That's what you can do with your supervisees. Just quick move over to MFT side, because this is a different, they want weekly. So if it's a 5 weeks, they want 5 hours and they want it weekly. So it's a really interesting divide, and I switched that. I'm going to go back to LPC intern. The supervisor, and in the supervision for LPC intern, what we need to remember is that this one cannot be more than 50% on the web. Okay, so of our hours, basically what they're saying is it can't be more than 2 hours a month via web, via internet. Supervisors must review the board rules and notes on log. That's the supervisors checking that. There must be board approved, we must be a board approved supervisor. So when y'all are done with this course and y'all turn in your paperwork, you become board approved. You can something about counting excess hours past 8/17, but we're in 2019, so we'll skip over that. We must comply with ethical standards as a supervisor for the LPC intern track. You are the one, again, turning in the change of site form, or if you're gonna add in a new supervisor form, it's our job to turn that in too, to remove ourselves as the supervisor and to sign on a new supervisor. So that actually helps you end one road and move to another. And no full licensure must be turned into supervised experience document form. So again, no full licensure is given unless your supervisor experience form is on file from the beginning. You have also completed your jurisprudence within 2 years, and there's an upgrade fee. Okay, but that's what they want. On the MFT associate side, 200 hours is what they want from supervision when you're turning this in. 100 of it can be transferred from your graduate program, so you can put like a little asterisk at the end and say 100 transferred over from graduate program. No more than 50 of that can be individual, and no more of that 50 of that can be via electronic / telephonic. There's a little red asterisk writing part. One of the proposed rules is that we are going to be able to do supervision by collect those hours by live video unlimited. So basically what that's saying is that you can do telephonic, you can do web, you can do that all unlimited. They're realizing with technology that person to person does help, but you're still going to get the same thing. You're going to get the same interaction by web, by technology, without all those advancements. That's a proposal. I hope they go with it, because the reality of getting all your supervisors in your office on a week-to-week basis, person to person, is very difficult. Associates can work in private practice, public or private agencies, hospitals, etc. under supervision. MFTs can be written in as independent contractors. LPCs can't. They can't be independent contractors. They have to be employees. 60 days to complete the supervisory agreement form, and it is the LMFT's associate, it's their job as a supervisee to submit the supervisor agreement form. So the LMFT associate, this part of our brain, has to submit the supervisor agreement form. Remember, in the LPC world, it's the supervisor submitting the paperwork. Okay. You can do group, you can do individual, can have up to 2 aboard supervisors, and you can count up to 500 hours in direct via web. And again, that's the, it looks like, again, there's that, we're going to be going to live web count. 500 hours. When you're collecting your hours for MFT associate for your supervisees, they can count up 500 of their hours that they're collecting can be via web. And again, that's with all the new technology stuff. So you can do webcam stuff with your clients, and you can count those hours. So, and what we're, again, in the MFT realm, not on paper, we're pushing everybody to do that technological assisted psychotherapy training or service training, so that you understand what's all involved in technology movement. Supervision allowed in other districts. So you can do that outside of state, or when other state supervisees come back in. Okay, so last page, and then we'll jump into our activity. Again, if this is a lot of information, please don't feel overwhelmed. That's why the rules and regulations are there. These are conversations you're going to continue to have with other supervisors. There's a lot of gray. We like to think it's black and white, but the board doesn't always make it clear, and that's why we have a lot of support and networking with one another. This last page here, these are just some extra stuff to throw in. When you look at the LPC page for what is required for your supervisees, the list is really small and kind of minimal. MFT, there seems to be a little bit more length in it. One of the things that is a difference is LPC interns do not have to do CEUs. It's not required. Do them. I highly recommend you to tell your supervisees, get the education, go to the workshops. You're interested in couples, do couples. You're interested in whatever, do that, but it's not required. MFT associated is. They want you to have 15 hours, 6 of them have to be ethics, and then of course your jurisprudence. And another note for both, yeah, that's for the CEUs. I was going to go off on another track, but I'm going to stick right with my thought right there. Supervisors cannot be employees by the associate. Supervisors cannot be blood related to their supervisees. So you might know a supervisee that really likes you and knows you and wants you to be their supervisor. Blood related, don't do it. Supervisor jobs to keep records. So it's the supervisor's job for the MFT to keep records of signatures and hours up to date. The MFT associate, we have to respect the supervision and associates are, supervision. If there's an issue that happens where your supervisee gets in trouble, you as the supervisor and your supervisee both get in trouble, because it is your job to watch your supervisee do the work in the MFTA world. Okay. In the LPC world, and I'll look further into the rules and regulations, but it's the supervisor that gets in trouble, not the supervisee, because the supervisor is in control of all the clients, all your paperwork, everything that our supervisees are doing in the LPC intern world. Those are you as the supervisor's notes, clients, everything.
Because they can't be independent.
Because they can't be independent.
Because
Yeah.
an associate can be independent.
Yeah, so the supervisor in the LPC world, is keeper of, holder of, responsibility of all of the LPC interns' paperwork, everything. In the MFT world, the supervisor and the supervisee are in charge of the paperwork and processes and clients and okay. Dual relationships must be avoided. Supervision cannot exceed more than 12 supervisees. So it is not defined in the LPC world. So, Chelsea, you want to be a supervisor, you can have as many supervisees as you want. It is not defined. In the MFT world, it is 12. The max I've done is 10. I think I've lost a little bit of my brain doing that. Right now I'm at 6 or 7. I'm at 7. Some flux in and out with a full-time job. So you get to decide what works for you. Are you keeping on top of them? Are you tracking them? How are you doing your paperwork? And there's different phases. You've got the brand newbies that you're filling out the paperwork to get them licensed. You've got the ones in the middle collecting all the hours. And then you've got the ones at the end that are turning in their paperwork. This is where the headache is, the beginning and the end, helping them fill out their paperwork. But when they're fully licensed, and this is kind of the fun part in the middle, watching them grow, right? From the brand new green, I don't know what I'm doing, to like, watch me go, I'm on my bike, and you can let go, mom and dad, okay? So you'll have to think about yourselves in terms of that supervision space. And then
So you yourself have only had max 10, even though you are a dual supervisor, you have only had max 10 for LPC and or LMFT at the same time.
at the same time.
Okay.
Now, I've been doing it since 2006. No, that's not right. 2010, and so 9 years I've been a supervisor. So it's been it's a bigger number that I've supervised people, because remember, they're here with me for 2 years, up to 5 years or 6, and or 18 months for the LPC track. So people can rotate in and out, but I've never had more than 10 because more than 10 at the same time. And you can try it and go up to 12 if you want. But and again, some are LPC track, some are MFT track, and some are both, which is the benefit of those that are both.
But technically, I could have 12 MFT and 8 LPC, or 20 LPC. I could choose to do that,
Technically,
technically.
yeah.
I
And
want it.
some people do this course also so that at some point in their life, they don't want to do their job. They want to actually retire being a supervisor.
Oh, wow.
So that might be something that they do for their income, but remember that is, you do have to pay taxes. You get to set the price with your client. You have to pay the taxes on that income. But if you want to make your living, I have a clause in my supervisory agreement form that I make with my supervisees that I have to be in practice. I don't want to be the supervisor that does the supervision without having been in practice currently. That's really important to me. And then again, the supervision is, the CEUs are required for MFT. Okay, so we are at 30 minutes, so we're gonna do this experiential component. Guys, I wanna thank us so much for being part of this so far, up to date. I am going to have us do this, I'm gonna let y'all, we're gonna go in groups. We're gonna split into groups. So Christian and Rebecca are groups, okay? Yasmin, come sit over here with Christian. You're gonna be on his team.
Okay.
And then Rebecca and Chelsea are gonna be on a team.
Okay.
Okay, so it's like
Two
Christian
teams.
and I are on the same team, though.
Y'all are
but
different teams.
We're different?
Yeah,
Okay.
this is your
I thought I
team.
was paired with Christian.
No.
I didn't understand that.
Yes, we got, so Christian and Yasmin are on a team.
We're like this.
I'm sorry, Christian and Yasmin are on a team, and Rebecca and Chelsea are on a team. Okay, so we're gonna play the game called, okay, I'm gonna write it and then I'll put it up here real quick. We're gonna call the game called MFT, LPC, or both. MFT, LPC,
We needed to be
Or both.
listening really well.
well, again, this is experiential. You're not gonna know it. You'll know some and you'll remember some, and you do have your handouts, but
Yes.
it might be something that you just put down and just hear and listen, because Jamie's gonna go over it with y'all anyways at the end. Okay?
Yeah, we're not experts, so we have to
We're not experts. Y'all are not experts, and I am even allowed to say I'm not the expert, because sometimes I even have to consult about what is really going on here. Okay, so this is just for fun, just a game. In this envelope are numbers 1 through 25, and we are just for fun gonna grab some along the way, just pick some, and I'm gonna read, and we are just gonna, in our own brain, be thinking LPC, MFT, or both. Here's some for you. Oops, drop some. Here's some for you.
Cute.
I guess
Okay.
Chelsea gets some and I get some.
And over here is our board, MFT, LPC, or both. And we're gonna just go through, and we're just gonna have fun with this.
Okay.
And we're just gonna do the best that we can. And then we're gonna review it afterwards. Okay, so over here we've got Christian and Yasmin's side, and then over here we've got Rebecca and Chelsea's side. Okay, so Yasmin, wanna start us off? Pick the
Sure.
number.
3.
3. You need CEUs for license. You and Christian get to decide. LPC, MFT, or both?
MFT.
MFT, okay. So both. No, MFT? You said MFT? Okay.
Just MFT.
MFT. What was the number?
3.
3. Need CEUs for license. MFT, correct. Okay. Pick one, Rebecca.
17.
17. 6 years max to get your license. You and Chelsea get to decide. MFT, LPC, or both. 6 years to get your license. MFT?
MFT.
Correct. What number? I need to just mark the numbers. 17. Thank you, guys. I don't think I'm going to need the board. We're having fun with this paper anyways. Next one. I'm going to have you be the picker since Christian can't pick.
15.
15. Board must have signed supervisory agreement form with supervisor and supervisee on file. The board must have a signed supervisory agreement form with the supervisor and supervisees on board.
Both.
Both, okay, correct. Are you playing with Christian? Is he helping you get
Yes,
this?
we're whispering.
Pick a number.
We have 5.
5. Can try to get full license at 2 years.
LPC is, you can do it in a minimum of 18 months. So it's gonna take.
Well, say it again, Jamie.
You can try to get your full license at 2 years.
Both, yeah.
Both, very good. That's right, because even though LPC might have it at 18 months, but maybe they don't at 2 years,
Right.
they can still try, they fully have those
Yeah.
hours. Very good.
Okay, 23.
23. Supervisor turns in the site change form. The
Okay.
supervisor has to turn in the site form change.
LPC.
LPC.
That's correct. Y'all are good.
18.
18. 5 years max to get your license. LPC, very good.
10.
Number 10, does not require site change when adding a new site. Does not
That's-
require a site change form when you're adding a new site.
MFT only.
MFT.
MFT, that's correct.
Christian said. Christian's on
Said.
fire.
Hit me.
Side note, for LPCs, when you do fill out that form, it has to show active. It takes about 2 weeks. It has to show active in the roster before you can start counting those hours. MFT, when you're filling out your paperwork at the end, you have to have a paperwork for every site. If you had 5 sites,
Yeah.
if you had 5 sites at once and then added more after one dropped off, you're filling them out for every
For
site for MFT. MFT. You do
Okay.
not have to track your site online. You as a supervisor are tracking that with your supervisee. Okay. Big question, pick a number.
24.
24. You can carry hours of supervision over from your graduate program. MFT?
Yeah.
MFT? Okay?
Okay, so
Oh, sorry.
so here's my question,
Go.
and I wrote it on there. Since I just did that, I just filled out everything.
Uh-huh.
I'm thinking to myself, there was no item on there for me to note that I was carrying over any supervision hours from graduate school.
So it's not on there because they really want you to have the direct supervision hours, and if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you'll have enough hours.
I didn't because I ended up with like 130 something.
They'll pull your record. They
Yeah.
have your
And
record.
the original.
They have the original. They saw where you went to school. They saw you got proper supervision. So you have up to 200. They'll take, if you write it in, they see it. If they don't, they're looking at where you graduated, that you've got your hours.
Well,
Some people
we
know.
had to turn in a supervise practicum experience form.
They
too,
have it
so-
on there.
Okay,
So
good.
they see it in your
Okay.
file. Mhm.
I was just
Good
wondering.
question. Yeah,
Okay.
no sweat. You got this.
Okay, 1.
1, 3,000 hours. You need 3,000 hours.
Both.
Both.
Very good. Easy.
Yeah.
22.
Proposed that you can do supervision via web unlimited. MFT, LPC, or both? Proposed that you
I
can
guess
do
it's MFT.
supervision via web unlimited. MFT, correct. Go ahead.
12.
12. You have to be hired as an employee, not an independent contractor.
LPC. Right?
LPC, correct.
Good. 11.
11. Board has to approve of site on roster to show and start to count hours. The board has to approve of the site on your roster for you to start counting your hours. LPC. LPC. MFT, you don't have to have a new site on the form online. You just track it on your own. So an MFT as an MFT supervisor in training,
Mhm.
you have an MFT supervisee that has 4 sites.
Mhm.
You do not have to turn in a site change or what site they're working on. You want to just know their start dates and end dates. You're tracking that of start dates and end dates. and they're letting the board know, they're not having to let the board know. So that at the end, you're just turning in forms for each beginning and end start and end date at each of those sites. LPC, we have to turn in a form, right, Christian? And then once they see that and it's up on the roster, then we can start collecting hours.
So what was the question again?
What number was it? Sorry. 11, the board has to approve of the site on the roster to start to count those hours.
So it sounds like it's at the very beginning though, not like a site change.
That's,
You know what I'm saying?
yeah, that's probably how I wrote it.
Yeah, okay.
But even though, and you're right, so in the beginning, you're right, it could be both, thank you. So it does have to, you do have to have the approval
When you're starting out.
when you start out. But for MFT, they'll just put you as active. They won't put you're working for A, B, and C location. They don't document that.
But
So
if you have a new supervisor,
Oh.
in addition to you being the supervisor, that supervisee has to inform the board
they do.
for both.
I have to look into that. We'll have to look at the rules and regulations. When you add in a new supervisor, the question is, when you add in a new supervisor as an MFT or LPC, do you have to inform the board? And I'm gonna say yes, because that's a whole new supervisor agreement
As
form.
MFT, yeah, because I had 2 supervisors, so you do have to let them know. And Jane was my supervisor first, and then I added someone, and I had to turn in a form.
Turn in a form for
Yeah.
him too. So yes, and if you decide that you don't like me and you want to find a new supervisor, or as
Never.
supervisors, and you want to add in a new supervisor, then you have to end a track with one and sign a new one. So yes, you're right, that does have to be up on the roster.
Yeah.
And it does say on there who your supervisor is. Y'all can go in and see what it looks like for y'all, or what it's going to look like for your supervisees. And as the supervisors, you do want to track these kind of things. You're going on board and watching, making sure that nobody's license has expired, or that their change of site is still on the roster even though they're not working there.
Yeah.
So it's really important we track those things. Okay, go ahead. Go.
Oh, yes, it is.
Oh, sorry.
6.
6, needs jurisprudence exam for your full license.
Both?
Yep.
Both.
Both. Go ahead. Good.
7,
7, can collect hours only when shown active on roster. Both, correct?
20.
20, both supervisor and supervisee are responsible for clients and their outcomes.
MFT.
MFT, correct.
We got 16.
16, 18 months minimum to complete full license. LPC, good job.
25.
25, you can have 2 board approved supervisors.
Both?
LPC?
LPC.
Is it both?
MFT you can, for sure. And you...
LPC you can too.
Okay, both.
Both, very good. Good brainstorming.
Yes.
Okay. 8, 4 hours of supervision a month.
LPC.
LPC.
9.
Weekly supervision.
MFT.
Very good.
4.
4, supervision. The supervisor turns in your supervisory agreement form. The supervisor turns in your supervisory agreement form.
Was that ours or yours?
That's theirs.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
You guys were like looking.
LPC,
I was like,
good.
what?
And again, sometimes it gets lost in translation, right? But if you pull up the paperwork and you look at it, there's specific directions that say supervisor must turn this in. It's written.
Right. 19.
19, renewal is on birth month.
MFT. I know that.
2,
2, 1,500 relational hours are needed.
You need it.
No.
neither.
Oh, you're right. I wrote that wrong. 750 relational hours.
Oh,
man.
Whoa, you caught
Whoa.
that!
Did it.
Woo!
Go out.
I got a grade. Check.
They get double the points.
Double points.
Oh.
Here, where's my candy?
What did I
Here.
get? The double.
Here's your bonus.
14.
14.
I
You
wouldn't-
can do group supervision with more. You can do group supervision, which equals more than 3 people.
Both?
Both. Very good.
I'm done.
We're done. Any more?
2 more.
2 more. I got her more. Sorry.
12.
12.
You guys can have
I
this
think
one.
I think I did 12. That must be a duplicate.
Oh,
Let's
you
just do
did
number
12?
13.
Okay.
Oh, it's actually it's 21 and 12.
Okay.
Let's do 21. Supervision, the supervisor is responsible for the clients, their files, etc.
LPC.
I think I did that one. Okay, and then last one was 13. You can work in a private practice. MFT?
Well,
Not LPC.
as the intern license.
As an intern
Only
license.
MFT.
Only MFT associate can be in private practice.
That was a good
If
one.
they're going to be in
Yeah.
private practice, they have to be hired as an LPC intern is going to be in a private practice. How do they have to be hired?
As an employee.
As an employee, not an independent.
W-2 on file.
W-2 on file. Okay, guys, I really thank everybody for your time and your energy. And again, a lot of stuff our brain really doesn't need to hold outside of this, but in here as y'all being my supervisors in training for having those amazing supervisees that are gonna like be amazing therapists. I really appreciate all y'all's time. If you don't mind reaching over and pressing that red
Sure.
button at the bottom,